Okay, one last task in this particular section, and that's to be able to go and get the current user that's logged in. So what we're effectively going to do is get them to authenticate to an endpoint. We'll interrogate their token, get their user from the database, and return a user object along with a token as well. So we'll head back to our API and to the account controller. And what we'll do is we'll just create a new endpoint below our register method. So let's just make sure we're in the right place. And under the register, we'll say HTTP, and we'll just make this an HTTP GET. So if they send a GET request to the account controller, then they're going to hit this particular endpoint. So we'll say public async task, and once again, we're going to return an action result, and we're going to return a user DTO, and we're going to say get current user as the name of this method that takes no parameters, because we're going to get the user information directly from the token. But in order to do that, we need to make sure that they authenticate to this endpoint. So we're going to say authorize as well as the attribute for this particular endpoint. And what we want to do is we want to get the current user. So what we can do is say var user equals await, and then we can say user manager, and we can say find by email async. So how do we get the user's email from the token? Well, one of the things we've got access to inside an API controller is a user object, which is a claims principal for the user associated with the executing action. And what we can do inside here is say user, and then we can say find first value, and we'll need to bring in system security claims for this, and then we can specify claim types dot email. And email is one of the claim types that we're sending up with the token. And then what we can do is return a user object from here. But we're starting to repeat ourselves if we return a new user DTO once again. Twice is okay, 3 times we probably should extract this into its own method. So what we'll do is we'll just add a helper method inside our account controller class here. So we'll say private, and we'll return a user DTO, and we'll just say create user object. And we'll take in the app user as a parameter here. And then we'll just cut and paste the return new user DTO inside here. And then we can just return and say create user object and pass in the user. And we can also obviously do the same thing for our other methods. So I'm just going to copy this line, and if the result is succeeded for the register, we'll pass in the return create user object, and we'll also do the same thing for our login method as well. We'll just remove this code and replace it with return create user object. So this should give us the user object for the currently logged in user. So let's go check that this is working. And if we go to the get current user, what we'll need to do is pass in a valid token for this. So let's just go back to our login user successful. I'll just resend this request, make sure the change that we made hasn't broken anything, and this looks fine. And I'll copy the token into my clipboard. We'll go to the get current user method, and we'll update the token inside here and paste over this one. And click on send, and we get our current user back, which of course is Bob. And this is as far as we're going to go with authentication right now. We've done the minimum necessary to log in, register a user, get a token back, and authenticate to our API. There is of course more we can do with authentication, and we will look at some extra stuff later on, but for now all we're interested in is making sure that we've got users in our database. We can log in, register, get token, authenticate, and those were our goals for this particular section. Don't worry if you feel that we haven't covered other aspects of authentication. That's not a goal at this moment in time, and we will come back to this a bit later on. But since we've finished this particular section, what we'll do is we'll save our changes into source control, and we'll stage our changes, and then we'll say end of section 12, commit these, and then push them up to GitHub. And we'll wrap this up with a summary.